to our show, Issues and Challenges in Today's Fire Service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, and I presently have the honor, I said this last time we were together, of serving as interim fire chief with the Trophy Club Texas Fire Department, another great fire department with some incredible firefighters. And I've got the dream partner for a police chief, Chief Patrick Arata next door, is just an incredible guy. If you're a fire chief and you don't have the relationship, I feel bad for you. I had a great one with Chief Curbo in Louisville, and this guy's just awesome. But I'm joined by my co-host and my good buddy, Assistant Chief Terry McGrath from Louisville, Texas, and we're hanging with two good friends, two great people today. Some exciting folks, Mark Payne and Kellie Hayney, both from the Denco 911 group in Denton County, Texas. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Today, our topic is going to be the critical role of the dispatch center, and we're going to get into a bunch of great stuff. But Kellie and Mark, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
It's and Terry will tell you, he's told you before, this is just such a cool thing that fire engineering does. The Humpday Hangouts, where that's just what it is. We're just hanging, chilling, talking, and Kellie, I can't remember not knowing you. I know when I got there in Louisville, you were just incredible, helping a new fire chief figure out everything I needed to figure out in Texas and in the Louisville area. I think one of my favorite stories that I tell you is the whole confusion. We were talking about this beforehand, folks, to our viewers. I just got there and I pulled up with the buggy, the fire car, chief's car, behind a broken down car, and the person's like, "Oh, I need to get a tow truck." I said, "Well, I can call one for you." So, up yonder, as they say up north, we refer to tow trucks as tow trucks, but in Texas they call them a wrecker. So I asked Kellie, she was at dispatch, I said, "Can you send me a hook?" And she said, "I can't do that." And I'm like, No, the owner's here requesting it. They're here. She goes, "I can't do that. I think we had I wasn't asking for a prostitute. Let me just say that. I wasn't asking for a hooker. I was asking for a tow truck."
Chief Lasky did not speak Texan when he got here.
That's Gwenna. Gwenna, we get a good fire going, and Gwenna Pettigo's another great dispatcher, and she just right in the middle of the fire would go, "Chief One from Louisville, you've been hanging with your Yankee buddies again, haven't you?" But anyway, welcome, guys. This is awesome. Terry?
No, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and I'm pretty excited to be able to talk about dispatch a little bit. I think if I had to rank the unsung heroes of public safety, it's you guys are sitting at the top of that list, and I think we're pretty fortunate in that. I sit on the board of directors at Denco 911, and I think I've been in that position for 3 years now, and I kind of try to hold my look of astonishment as Mark will discuss something technical, and I have no idea what he's talking about. And it's
coming from you.
Well, yeah, but
you, Elroy, is pretty awesome because
it's shameful though sometimes because how much you truly don't understand about the 911 system and about what happens. Obviously the 99% exposure that we have is coming after the fact, after the calls have gotten to where it needs to be, after they've actually located people, and then be able to have that information available to us. And I remind our guys every single time is that we're so fortunate right now with the technology and the way that things are evolving so quickly that we have more information and access to more information than we ever have before. And unfortunately, there's a lot of agencies that don't have as much as they should, or they're not utilizing or taking advantage as much as they should. So this is an interesting topic to me, and I hope that we can bring a lot of interesting information to the listeners.
Well, and one more reminder, by the way, for our viewers, if you have any questions for today, fire them off on Twitter. Just make sure you add hashtag FETalk for fire engineering, FETalk. And don't forget to catch our roll call tips at FDIC.com all the time. And again, these shows are incredible. And I'm going to save, I've kind of got a couple comments later about what we had to do to dial in some lippy paramedics way back when that weren't appreciating dispatch there. We took care of that. But if we could, Mark, for a lot of our viewers, describe Terry and I, and obviously Kellie, working there now with all her years in dispatch as well, but we know what Denco 911 does and their incredible role they play. But for our viewers, explain what Denco 911 does.
Sure. All right. right, thanks, Chief. Texas is unique in that there are actually 3 different 911 administrative types of agencies here, and without going into all the backstory, each has its own purpose and geographic region in which they're responsible. Districts like the Denco Area 911 District, it was allowed to be created through voter referendum. So the voters came to the polls in '87, decided they wanted to create a 911 district specifically to administer 911. And contrary to popular belief, 911 is essentially a phone number, some special databases, and routing equipment to get the call to the right location. It's not the soup to nuts all the way to response. So our role is to get the call to the right PSAP, public safety answering point, so a telecommunicator, our call taker dispatchers can take the call. So we are, we're nearly a 30-year-old organization. We serve a population of about 750,000. Our geographic region is essentially Denton County. We've got the city of Fort Worth encroaching on the southwest side. We actually take in the whole city of Carrollton on the southeast side, including the Dallas County portion. But it's a fast-growing population here in Denton County. In addition to doing 911 call setup and delivery, we of course provide the call-taking equipment. We provide training associated with the use of that equipment, and in these 30 years have expanded training to include a myriad of other training opportunities, from active shooter to a very robust EMD dispatch program. We pay for the certification of all the telecommunicators in the district. That's an investment the board is seen to be well worth the life-saving value it brings. There's a public education component, of course, and then we've got a support function on the 911 side. And we do database related to 911 and also rural addressing. So we work with the county to assign addresses from the PO Box standard and new development in the county. But the district's one of about 27 in the state. There's others like this district. I've kind of found my way into public safety back in '93. I started working for the Lubbock 911 district. I was hired on to do geographic information system mapping. They wanted to map the whole county, take paper maps, digitize them for use in call, for placing calls on a map in dispatch. So that was my introduction to 911 and public safety. It, of course, included database, and it became a technical job, and I found my way into IT. So I'll struggle here as we go through this talk to not get too technical, because that's my nature. But it's 911, Mark Fletcher with Avaya, he's their chief technology officer on the public safety side, said most people see 911 as a box, and it's all neatly contained in this little box, but it's really very complex. It's interdependent on other systems, and with next generation 911, it changes everything. I believe we'll have time to talk about that a little bit later, but DENCO is an agency that's focused on ensuring calls are sent to the right place, answered by competent and proficient telecommunicators with the best tools available. We have a robust network to ensure the call delivery. And it's something we're all very proud of here.
Well, it's an incredible organization, and like I said, I like bragging on you when I travel. And that was just not even a scratch the surface kind of description of everything that you do. Even I mean, it's incredible what Denco 911 does. Kelly, real quick, take us through how did you get into? I know how I got into dispatching. I was actually dispatching, believe it or not, through high school, and I always tell the story, when I got shot as a cop, I was working the desk. So, I've got a very special place in my heart for dispatchers. But, Kelly, how did you get into dispatching? Take us kind of through that, and then how long you're at Louisville and so on and so forth.
All right. So I lucked into my job in dispatch. I was living with my roommate and just come home from college, and she got hired on at the police department with a group of 4 other people. And one of those 5 did not make it through the training program, so they had an opening, and she said, "You have got to come do this. This is the best thing ever. It's the funnest job." And I went, "Okay," and went through the rigorous hiring process and never looked back. I'll be going into my 23rd year of public safety type jobs, and I worked my way up all the way to communications manager, and then decided I had 2 other younger children, and I wanted to go back and finish my degree, which I had not completed, and shift work was not working out in that environment. So I left the dispatch center, finished my degree and came here to Denco. And I always say in every training class that I teach that all good little dispatchers want to retire to Denco because it's the best place ever. And so I've been here ever since.
Well, and Mark, you mentioned something, and like I said, Terry's got a couple things we really want to get to, but the EMD training, just so people understand, for those that are watching that aren't necessarily a dispatcher, because we have all different folks that watch and tune in, and definitely watch us later. How long does it take? I mean, EMD, it's not just here's your clipboard and emergency medical, and you're going to just walk through the callers, with a medical emergency. How long does it take to get a dispatch? You're talking a lot of times dispatchers that have never they've never been EMTs, they've been paramedics, right? And you're training them on. It's incredible. How long does it take to get them through that?
And I'll let Kelly speak to this to some extent, but there's a couple predominant standards for what is called the protocol, EMD protocol, APCO being one and priority dispatch being the other. So even without EMT type training or background, the protocol is a decision tree. It allows you to walk through identify the chief complaint, and then it provides you a nice again decision tree that allows you to walk through what the next steps and seeking response from. So with a structured training class like that, you can't take someone who's fairly new into the profession and get them up to speed pretty quickly. Part of that is for us too, is we have a consultant that we allow all the public safety entry points dispatch centers to use as a QA QC person to check calls that are being live calls that are taken and evaluate what can be done to improve upon it, and then provide remedial training in the specific areas they need assistance. I would like to throw it over to Kelly because I think she can speak both from her previous dispatch experience, but also she has a significant amount of training under her belt as well as a trainer.
Emergency medical dispatch is typically a 3-day class with a 4-hour additional what we call ProQA, which is the computerized software that takes you through that tree of questions that Mark mentioned. It's a class that most agencies require their dispatchers to have, as most agencies do provide medical training to the callers. And it's scary for the new people in the beginning to know that what you say can make a difference in that caller's health and well-being. So I think the majority of it is just getting over that fear and getting comfortable with the questions and the method of the protocols that you have to use.
Well, and I mentioned before we went on, I say this everywhere I go. I've said it at the NENA convention. If you've never had the opportunity, and I try to explain this to the public a lot of times, if you've never had the opportunity to breathe life back in, I'm not trying to sound dramatic, I'm being very upfront and honest about this. If you've never been able to, if you never know, to be able to breathe life, you're going to be able to breathe life back into a baby over the telephone is just incredible. It truly is incredible. I've listened to some of those tapes from Louisville, Kelly, that were just, some brought you to tears. I mean, just, all of a sudden you hear the baby crying on the other end. I know we had a bad one on the lake with a girl that got hit by a prop, and to listen to the calmness, the professionalism, the calmness, and the instruction, it's unbelievable to be able to do that over the telephone. And I just think that's incredible to, everybody thinks you got to put your hands on someone, and, and we forget everything that's going on. It's amazing.
I've got a comment to that very point. It was in the early 90s, maybe about 91, a baby drowned. And this was before we had an EMD program here at the district. And our board said, this is unacceptable. These people are taking the calls that we're charged with delivering, and we need to somehow better equip them to handle these types of scenarios. So it was a tragic loss of a child drowning in a pool that kicked off the whole EMD program to make sure that we can do everything possible to keep that from happening again.
Well, and let me ask you this, Mark, real quick, is NENA does some incredible things. I always explain that NENA is like the Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP to the police department, what like the International Association of Firefighters is to a union firefighter, the National Volunteer Fire Council is to the volunteer group, but NENA I love that group. That is just a great group of people.
It's an interesting compilation of folks. When NENA was first formed, it was really created, as many folks can imagine, when 911 was first began being deployed throughout the United States. It was done by the telephone companies exclusively. A lot's changed, and next generation 911 is accelerating this change, but it was all leased equipment. It was provided, owned, operated by the telco. You paid your monthly bill, and you didn't really need technical staff to support it. But the industry, the telcos, knew they needed to come together to talk about interconnection and service delivery and things of that nature. So NENA really started to be the entity to help fulfill that need. And of course, public safety professionals showed up early on. It was really a 911 administrators conference in the beginning, coupled with the telco folks, and then the technology people, of course, started showing up with their vendor wares, and over time it's evolved into kind of a sister organization of APCO, focusing primarily on 911, but still touching on a lot of other public safety components, and telecommunicators are a big part of that. But NENA is an incredible resource. It's NENA that I forget now. I think it's been 4, maybe 5 years now since they became a standards development organization, a recognized SDO, and with the finalization of the NENA I3 standard, which is effectively the next generation 911 standard. The work that was put forth by public safety professionals, vendor community, the telco side, and the equipment side, everybody coming together to codify a standard that could be followed for moving forward into the future. It was the platform of NENA and its technical development conference that really made all of that possible.
Well, and for those that NENA is the National Emergency Number Association.
Correct.
APCO is another. I feel bad I even mentioned APCO is another incredible organization for our dispatchers. Terry, you wanted to get into something which especially me traveling as much as I do and staying in hotels and everything. You wanted to jump on something with Mark and Kellie here.
Yeah, something that and of course, again, sitting in my world, I don't think about this much, but of course, the first time I heard this scenario described, and I thought, wow, that is a problem, and you would think that in 2016 this would have been something that could have been or should have been addressed years ago. But Mark, if you could kind of explain to the layperson the recent developments with Carrie's Law and how that came about, and the challenges that's created in the 911 system.
Yeah, sure. Carrie's Law is named for a woman who was tragically murdered by her estranged husband in Marshall, Texas in 2013. So it's just been a few years. The problem that prompted the creation of Carrie's Law here in Texas, and now there's legislation both in the House and the Senate in the U.S. Congress similar to ours here in Texas, trying to address this particular problem of multi-line telephone systems, sometimes known as PBX, key systems. It's any system that requires the user to dial another digit before dialing out. The particular problem is the need to dial 9 before dialing 911, for example. In the case of Carrie Hunt, she'd met her estranged husband at a hotel for visitation for the kids, and he bludgeoned her to death with a knife. 31 strikes, and the 9-year-old daughter and a younger daughter, child, I believe it was a daughter, were present in the room when this was happening, and the 9-year-old tried to dial 911 4 times and never connected. She did not know she had to dial a 9 from that hotel phone before she'd be able to reach emergency services. Her dad, understandably so, was confused and upset that how could this possibly be happening. And this is a 35, 40-year-old problem. It's always existed, and unfortunately, like so many important pieces of legislation, someone has to die before it creates enough momentum to get things changed. Thankfully, Hank Hunt is a man of integrity and grit, and he pushed hard on a lot of folks to bring this forward and into the light to get legislation passed that would try to address this. So
and he was Carrie's father, isn't that right?
Correct. That is correct. That was his father, her father. He got the attention of the FCC. A couple of the FCC commissioners weighed in. They visited him out in East Texas. So he's made a huge impact. He was honored in 2015 by the NG 911 Institute in Washington, D.C. as I believe it was Citizen of the Year, essentially, for the work he had done. But what this piece of legislation here in Texas does is it requires MLTS operators, multi-line telephone system operators, to modify their system or replace their system within reason. So if for whatever reason you're unable to modify your system to remove the pre-dial digit of 9, 8, or whatever other key might have to be pressed before dialing 911, that must be done. If you're unable to do that for whatever reasons, you are allowed to file a waiver by submitting an affidavit before September 1 of this year, 2016. Excuse me, my motion sensing light's turned off. I guess first I had to get it to turn on.
You know, wave your arms.
We're trying to save the planet one life at a time. So the waiver, for those listening in Texas that would be affected by this, if you do need to do it, it's a 1-year waiver, and the affidavit can be submitted by visiting the website texas911.org/Carrie's Law, and that's spelled K-A-R-I-S-L-A-W, K-A-R-I-S-L-A-W, and texas911.org. It explains the law, it explains what brought it about, and then the process. It's an online submission. It doesn't have to be approved by a 911 agency like us, but it's provided to us so that we know which operators out there are unable to comply at this time. It's an incredibly important law. Obviously, lives can be affected by it today. You know, when we spend time in a public education component of our organization teaching grade schoolers to dial 911, you don't try to confuse them by adding, oh, and you may need to dial a 911. So the message they get from early on is you dial 911, no caveats. So this is finally bringing those two things into harmonization. What we're teaching should always apply. You should always be able to dial those 3 digits and those 3 digits alone and be able to connect. So it is an important thing. If you there is a link I can provide to this webinar. I'm not sure, Chief, how I'd go about doing that, but there's a 30-second PSA that explains it. Just what it is and how an operator has to go about coming into compliance. But modern systems, modern mobile, or not mobile, but the MLTS systems can be modified inexpensively. And I think once the vendor community kind of stepped up with this and the business community stepped up, the hotel operators nationally stepped up, they realized, you know, we can change this. It's really not that big a deal. So it's unfortunate, the loss of life for Carrie and her family's loss. But it's a good thing, and we're thankful to have it now.
Would you be willing? I know you're going to have to cut out because you guys get a lot going on towards the end of the show. To give, if somebody's looking for that link, your email address, could they email you and you say here it is? And if you want to throw that out there right now, we'll remind them at the end too.
Sure. Yeah, you can send me an email. It's Mark MARK .Payne PAYNE, P as in Paul, at denco denco.org. So mark.payne@denco.org, and I'd be happy to provide you with these links and information.
Perfect. Well, and I know for years, Terry, you and I've talked about it at our open house during Fire Prevention Week. It was always cool to see. It was just a nice being able to get the kids on the phone with the dispatchers sitting there, and they're right next to you and getting them to rehearse, and then later on, we're giving out awards to children that have saved a loved one, a mom that was choking or a brother, and it all goes back to that 5-minute little interaction at an open house to get them to do it. So the public education aspect is huge, and that's just a small segment. But Kelly, take for a moment. I mean, it's got to be one of the most difficult things in the world to answer a phone and try to get the information you need from someone to be able to. You know what I'm saying? I mean, whether there's language barriers, people that are panicked. I mean, that's got to be just incredible to grab what you need to get the call dispatched.
It is, and it can be. Fortunately, through the training, that is one good thing that DENCO supports, obviously, is the rigorous training that we do offer to our dispatchers. because it is a unique job, and the fact that we have to communicate with someone just over telephone. We don't have the visual communication, we don't have the body language communication, and we are met with barriers. It could be an age barrier when we're dealing with a child. It could be an elderly barrier, dealing with someone that's disoriented, all sorts of barriers that can prevent open communication lines. The training we provide gives them that. It gives them those abilities to think outside the box sometimes. Even though we have policies and procedures we have to follow, sometimes you have to wing it. You're met with a certain situation of maybe not being able to verify where our caller is and they don't know their address. We have to come up with a way to find them in order to get them the help they need.
And it all adds to that. Terry, you and I talked about this before, that stress level. I'm going to throw this out there, Terry, right now. You guys still do the light duty thing, don't you, at dispatch?
Yeah.
Are you still doing that?
Right. Yes.
It's what an incredible, for a while, light duty was taken away if you got injured on duty, right? You got injured on duty, modified duty was fine, but light duty because someone from another department abused it. And then our HR in Louisville, being very proactive, allowed an injured firefighter or police officer, if they wanted to save their sick time, if they were injured off duty, they could come back and they could work in dispatch. And some took advantage of it and some didn't. And Terry, it changed things, I know, in that fire department. I remember when Cassie Finley, I think he left for another job, but I remember he was up there with the knee, after having knee surgery, and he doing everything, and the dispatchers, it was great because they got to work with a firefighter paramedic, and he got to work with the dispatchers. And I remember the first day he came back to work, I was at Threes, and guys were taking a quick break, and I walked in to after getting some fuel, and he's just sitting there. I think he's eating a bowl of oatmeal. He's just sitting there real quiet. His first day back, and I remember he threw the spoon down in the dish. He threw the spoon down. He says, "All right, if anybody ever gives dispatch a hard time again, you have no idea what goes on up there. You have no idea the stress level, and you think you got it bad. You got to call. You ought to go sit up." And I'm like, that was perfect. That was absolutely perfect, because what a great supporter to go, look, you have no idea until you're up in the nerve center what it's like to try and do that. And Terry, is that still working for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, to the point that there's more than one occasion I would love to have. We, like most people, when you hire someone new, we send them up there for a 4-hour orientation. This is what dispatch does. And just like when dispatch sends someone to ride with us, invariably nothing's going to happen. So they leave with the impression that, well, that's not that big a deal. And then we come back from there and go, well, I don't know. I mean, they just, they don't get the full exposure to just truly how chaotic and difficult that job is. So when we send someone up there on light duty and they're assigned there for a month or something, obviously they're going to get indoctrinated into the full meal experience. Every single person that has gone up there and come back, I think the demeanor, their tone of voice on the radio, they seem to be a little bit more accepting, a little bit more patient. It's a tremendous program. It's an exchange student program, if you will, and if I could figure out a way to make it to where they have to spend an appreciable amount of time sitting in there, so that I want them to walk out of there with their eyes big and their mouth open and go, oh my God, I had no idea. And it is truly but you know what, it's a mutually beneficial experience, because like you mentioned, that it's so helpful, and I get that positive feedback from the communication center too, is to say, man, it was really nice having somebody up here, because they're sitting over there and they have 20 questions to ask, and now they can ask the guy that rides on the boat on the lake, and we try to educate them during their orientation period as well, but you only have a limited amount of time, you only have a limited amount of resources, so it's really, really, really a great program. And we've seen benefits on both sides of the radio, if you will. So I would encourage anybody out there that if you have the ability to make that happen, make it happen.
Well, Kelly, I remember you riding out once. I remember you riding out at Central one day. I know we try to get a lot of dispatch, and you said they dispatch a call. I remember you walked out and go out on the floor, out on the apparatus. You go, how do you hear those? And you said it all makes sense sometimes. I'm like, why are they asking me when they get in the rig? could you give us the address or give us the name, whatever, even with the MCT and stuff. But I'm like, it was just, without that relationship where I think it's absolutely a must that you get new firefighters and police officers to go work in the dispatch center, see what it's like. But to bring the dispatchers, and we even had a list of objectives for a while of, look, this is our chance to show our dispatchers what happens over here, because it's like the media, Terry. We did the Media Fire Academy. The first time we did it, I remember James Rose from Fox. He's on the news explaining what flashover is. When I say flash, that when I went to the Media Fire Academy, it's the same thing when a dispatcher rides out. But Kelly, I remember you coming out and going, "Oh my God, how do you guys hear that?"
Yes, exactly. I will have to say that support that we had when HR implemented that program, it was one of the most beneficial things in harmonizing the relationships between dispatch and firemen. And it wasn't until I stepped foot in the bay and heard how the dispatch sounds when you're standing in there and the fire engine's going and the exhaust system's going. It's like, now I know why they asked me for the address 5 times before they even get in the rig. Okay, it makes sense, because they can't hear anything in here.
Well, we ran into that. One of the most challenging things to locate a call scenarios to locate a caller is on our lake. And so a few years ago, we went over there and we said we want to bring all the dispatchers out on the lake with us. So we did. We put them out on the boat. We brought them out to the lake, and so it was kind of funny for some of them, because when you're sitting in the center and you say to you're trying, they're doing their best. So when a boat's sitting in the middle of the lake and they say, "What do you see?" and they go, "Well, I see a bunch of trees and there's a bridge." So we bring them out on the lake on the boat, sit in the middle of the lake, and go, "All right, look around, and how many bridges do you see?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, there's 3." And then you say, "Okay," when they say they see a clump of trees, so we're not being obstinate when we come back and say, "Hey, Louisville, there's a lot of trees out here. You're going to have to help us out." So the blood pressure rises, and we tend to be our own worst enemy, but we have to think about it in their shoes, and they have to think about it in our shoes, and that's not always easy to do when you're under the pressure of trying to unionize medical help with someone who's dying. So it's always, and you know what, I say this too, I try to go up there often, and I try to just step in there, and then usually I made the mistake last year. We had a bad ice storm, and so they were getting slammed, and I thought, wow, this is an opportunity, right, as a leader in the fire department. I'm going to go over there and make my presence known, and then I'm going to jump right in there and help them out. So I went in there, and I'm telling you, phone calls were going on. It was nuts. And so I walked in, and I kind of said, "Hey, whatever, I'm here to help." And they turned around and they said, "Great, sit down, whatever." So I sat down, did exactly what I was told. And within 2 minutes, someone looked at me and said, "Hey, call Coppell and get a truck coming to this 1 alarm." And I go, "Yeah." Well, I looked around. Well, I don't have Coppell's phone number, and I've never sat on the console before. I don't even know where to look. I can get on Google and look for Coppell Fire Department. But I realized just how stupid of a plan that was. But it really gives you appreciation for, it's that whole deal of walking in someone else's shoes, and that's again, as I said in the beginning, they're unsung heroes, and I think we often overlook that or forget that point. But hey, Mark, I know your visit with us is going to be a little bit short, but I wanted to touch on a couple of more things with you if we can. But everyone's hearing, there's a lot of buzz about it. It makes a good splash in the media, but I think maybe a little bit of an explanation about what text to 911 will do for us, but more importantly, what the challenges are to truly make this work. And I think it's easy to say, "Oh yeah, text to 911," because we sit right here and text one another and it works without fail. Mm-hmm. But this is a little more complicated.
It is, and as I alluded to earlier, I can go technical, but I won't, and we don't have enough time. But text to 911 is currently, it's considered SMS, short messaging service or simple messaging service, and it's non-multimedia. There's no attachments. You're limited to the characters of 160 characters, 140, and with that, you have a limited amount of communications. It's not real time. So as a text message is being sent, there's no feedback to the receiving party the sending party, whether it's been received, and then the receiving party doesn't know if additional information is being typed. There are some applications in phones today that will show you that, but in traditional, strict SMS as a standard, it doesn't exist that way. So texting really, our position and the board's position here at DENCO 911 has always been to implement it in a way that will be the most efficient and effective way for call takers to receive that information in their existing workflow. Pardon me. So there have been quite a few deployments throughout the U.S. in the last few years. They've always been a secondary system, and the board decided almost 18 months ago that they wanted to wait for our vendor to deliver the solution that would integrate it into the workflow. So part of that, one thing is vendor supporting it, the equipment supporting it in the equipment, and then the other parts are getting the cell providers to interconnect with the 911 network, and there's lots of elements in between. It's really, it gets, as you said, it gets a lot of press, and it sounds very exciting for the active shooter scenarios, hiding in your closet with an intruder, trapped in a trunk, all these things where maybe you couldn't speak because the situation just won't allow for it. Really the bigger issue, and the one our board and we'll be deploying here, we've seen a few delays trying to get everything just right. We should be deploying at the end of this month, early next month. The missing component really, and to your point, Terry, is that everybody uses texting. And there's a community of 35+ million people who are deaf, hard of hearing, or speech impaired who also use texting. They stopped using TTYs and TDDs pretty much everywhere. So we have a huge community of users, if you want to call that, a demographic of people who don't have the same level of access to 911 that a speaking party does. So we see that as the real payoff to this deployment. In the practical terms, we're more likely to have a call come from someone who has a speech hearing impairment than we probably are in an active shooter, or at least I hope so. But that's the immediate payoff. Our public education campaign, as soon as it's ready, and we've tested it and we roll it out, will be call if you can, text if you can, because voice communications is far more efficient. And they're very, very good. We have some printed materials ready for deployment, and with that, we hope to get the public educated. We've outreached to the regional deaf school here in the county. We've spoken with folks in Dallas and Fort Worth. While they're not in our service jurisdiction, they have lots of connections into our community here in Dane County. So that's a big part of it. The longer-term vision, and what the FCC is carrying and picking up right now, is called RTT, or real-time texting. It is seen as the long-term solution. And again, there's lots of interconnection that has to happen. There's standards, interfaces for interfacing the various carriers and service providers, network operators. And the equipment ultimately has to support the display of that information. So those are the immediate challenges. But it is kind of step one, if you will, in next generation 911 services. It's that first thing that's different from just a plain old voice call.
Well, I think it's amazing too. As I travel and I still see all the signs for TTY, just what you said, it's pretty much gone or going away. I mean, yeah. Everybody's using their cell phones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and while the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, requires that we continue to support and test it in dispatch on a regular basis, the consensus is most folks can't remember the last time they took a TTY call.
So, Mark, you just referenced that real quick, and I guess to clarify and help to educate some people, but when we're referencing next generation 911, what is that? And I know that in DENCO we've made that switch, but obviously it's easier back when 911 was tied to a physical phone with a physical line, and the phone company knew where all those were. But we're not in that world anymore, and I don't know what the numbers are, the percentages you probably do, but the number of 911 calls that are coming in that are obviously cellular, and so just kind of touch on what next generation 911 is and what that means.
Okay, well, this is an expansive topic, and I'm going to try to really crunch it down. There's a lot that could be said. In its core, in its essence, next generation 911 is the migration from 1950s and 60s telephone communications technology. It serves 911 well and has for these past 50 years. But we're at a point where to receive what the general public expects to be able to communicate in terms of texting and images and video and attachments and all these things that they commonly use to communicate with one another, you need an infrastructure that will support that. Everybody knows the internet. Well, the internet is based upon internet protocol, an industry specification developed late 60s, early 70s to allow communications between diverse computer systems. So Next Generation 911 is, in essence, a little mini internet. It's all internet protocol based. It's not running on the public internet, but it's using the same technologies and equipment. So migrating to that means we have the ability, we have the platform, the foundation upon which we can layer lots of new services as they come to market. As you alluded to, we've been an early adopter in that area, and we've migrated off of the old telephone company selective routers, the old 911 routing technology, and we're on an internet protocol-based router. Kind of the next step, and you also mentioned wireless, the next step is emergency call routing function, ECRF, and that is the routing of a 911 call based on the real-time location of a caller. Getting into that whole topic area is generally people would think my call's being routed based exactly on where I am, but across the U.S., it's really being routed based on the sector of a cell tower that took your call. In a wireline scenario, it's still going to be taking, it's pulling from a static record from a database. You're at your location. So here in Dane County, 90% of our calls, 911 calls, are wireless now. So every single call that comes in is being routed based on some predetermined routing algorithms, if you will. We want to move to next generation, and that's a big step because, one, you have to have the location coming from the device and or network really quickly. And there's a lot of impediments to that, but we have to have a GIS that is precise enough that if the call's on this side of the street, it needs to go to this jurisdiction. If it's on that side of the street, it goes to that jurisdiction, irrespective of what tower, cell tower face took it. So that's kind of the next big step. But in and at its core, NG911 is all about internet protocol and the various solutions that can be layered upon it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. I know that you've got a commitment, and I know that we came to an understanding we would let you go begrudgingly. So anyway, I just want to take that opportunity real quick and say thanks for joining us, and I appreciate you making the time available to us.
Well, you're very
absolutely.
I apologize that I don't have more time. This is a commitment I couldn't easily change.
No, I understand, yeah.
I'm happy to take follow-on questions if folks do have some from the little bit I've thrown out there. I'd be happy to share more information. There's a wealth of information out there, but as you alluded, Terry, it's kind of complicated, and there's a lot to it, and there's lots of pieces to it, and you can be at various stages along that evolution of NG911. But at its core, the first step is funding, and many people have challenges with that across the U.S. Because of diversion of funds in many cases. In some cases, it's shrinking population, and the FCC is looking at how does that funding of 911 to speed up deployment, how is that best handled? Likely, and I'll just throw this in here real quick, it's probably going to be assessed instead of on handsets or lines as it is today. It will be assessed based on bandwidth usage, because even your voice services now, like VoLTE, voice over LTE, more and more calling is actually a data application doing voice. So funding and getting that 911 infrastructure in place is the next step for a lot of folks. But,
well, Mark, thank you. Seriously, I mean, I know you held in there probably longer than you were supposed to, but thank you so much for coming on board today, and thanks for what you do. Yeah. You've got an incredible group there. I live in Louisville. I live in Denton County, so I'm even more thankful you take care of my family. But thank you for everything your folks do, and thanks for coming on with us today.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I appreciate the opportunity, and if you ever dared to have one focused on NG, it could probably make everybody want to turn the computer off. But I'm happy to have this opportunity, and you're right. We have a great group of folks here, and I'm proud to be part of this organization, and it's been a pleasure serving with both you and Assistant Chief. So let me know if there's more I can do for y'all, and again, thank you for understanding my obligations. I'll see y'all later.
Thank you very much.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Mark. Thank you, buddy. Hey, Kel, I wanted to ask you, Kelly, for the longest time. I mean, while you were dispatching, you were a trainer there. You've always been one that loves training and the future generation of dispatchers. I remember the first time I showed you the tape for West Warwick, Rhode Island with the Station Social Club fire. And I remember the impact you had using that to train your dispatchers when you were trying to emphasize, and where I'm leading with this is call taking time, like to get the call bumped out dispatched. For them to watch that video, horrible tragedy at the Station Social Club, but to see how fast, within seconds, if you will, 90 that door filled up with people and how fast that fire spread. The impact I think you had with your dispatchers was pretty incredible back then, showing them that tape to get the message out.
Yes, and I think that's important. We hound our dispatchers through the training, time is of the essence, seconds count. But I think until you have a visualization of what exactly that means, it makes it difficult. Yes, they understand it and they get the numbers in and they're very quick at what they do, but until you have that visual of what exactly does it mean by seconds count, that is one of the biggest videos that we can use in that impact of you have them count with the video, and you can see that those 7 seconds in that time frame is crucial to how it may impact the call.
Exactly. It's such a horrible event, god-awful heart. I've been out there. I know the firefighters, 100 people, lost their lives, but just like 9/11, for us to move past the tragedy and not learn something from it, not be better for it, is even, it just adds to the tragedy. So, to be able to take that video and we're saving lives. We're getting you said seconds count. We were cutting response times here, and the guys have been great in Trophy Club. But I talked to other people. I said, I want you to hold your breath. I want you to hold your breath for 40 seconds because we had a little delay with a door opener. I said, just hold your breath for 40 seconds. Come on, hold it. That's how much longer they're not breathing while we're messing with the door. And the guys like, and they knew, and it just was one of those once in a while reminder because they're great guys here. But seconds do count, and I think you just with all the calls coming through. I mean, I know Terry and I talked about this as well. We all got them. I have my funny stories about establishing Dam Command and the whole thing. But if you could pick one or two of your most memorable calls, there's so many, but I know I asked you about this earlier, and it's like, God, how do you pick one or two, just one that really stands out where you just every now and then you think about it in a good way.
Well, there are always the good calls. Unfortunately, in the line of work that we do, it's, our best day is typically someone's worst day. So the percentage of bad calls compared to good calls is a little lopsided. That one good call that you take can carry you for an entire year of bad calls. And there are so many when you've been in this a long time, and sometimes they tend to all run together. But like you mentioned, helping a child in need, or that they've stopped breathing and you can hear them breathe again because of the directions you've given your caller. That's a successful call. That's huge, and that leaves a lasting imprint. My special calls are typically ones that deal with children, and knowing that I was able to comfort them in a scary time. Those always tend to stick with you. I always joke to the new people that you'll leave this job having lots of voices in your head. We may not have the visuals that the responders do, but we still have those voices that we can hear, and we replay that.
That's a great point. I never thought about that. That's you'll hear. I remember calls I was on as a paramedic. I can remember expressions, people saying things, but there's voices. Not crazy voices, but I think once in a while.
We do have to differentiate that.
Dispatching may get you to that point. I know Terry hears voices all the time, but anyway, just whether it's a crying baby or an elderly person, or I like telling there's one of those happy stories where one of your former dispatchers that you worked with in Louisville, Diana Fairchild, with an elderly lady that used to call a firehouse all the time when she ran out of cat food, and milk, and Diana turned to one of our police officers, Chessa, who I'm godfather for Chessa's baby girl, Kaylee. Hi, Kaylee. I get to spoil another blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl again. But they end up adopting this elderly lady. I mean, and I know not all dispatchers do this, but Diana she would take her on vacation. This lady was by herself, and I remember Diana was going to do a quilt for Emily out of all her softball T-shirts. She does a real great quilting. And everybody thinks of quilting as like the 95-year-old person. Diana is definitely not 95, but it's a great hobby. And I went to her and she says, "Well, I'll do it under one condition, that you give the money to, I think it was Janice." I said, "Well, yeah." She goes, so we went over, and I think all she had her do was like three times threads, whatever that she could do. And she turned and gave her the money, and she turned and gave this elderly lady the money, and then that lady got all emotional because she had the refrigerator had just quit work. I mean, it was just, and I'm just, just dispatchers have so many different ways of touching people's lives, that we just oversee. We just oversee, And Terry, I know you're very particular about dispatch and your protection over them. What do you say to that young firefighter when you hire them? You hire people there, assistant chief, about what dispatch does.
Well, it's funny because growing up, listening to the same thing come out of my mom's mouth my entire life, which was, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. And when it comes to dispatch, there's nothing truer in the world. And I constantly, obviously sitting in an office all day, so I listen to radio traffic all the time. And I know, because I'll know the person that says it, and I know they didn't mean anything by it. It wasn't a intentional thing, or they weren't taking a shot at somebody. But you tend to notice a lot of that, and so I get very protective of communications because sometimes I have to remind some people that life without a dispatcher would be pretty difficult for you. I guess I could equip you with a cell phone. You can make all your own phone calls, and you can make contact with a gas company, and you can sit and listen to somebody screaming in the other end of a phone while you are trying to talk to someone on a radio and trying to input all that information into a computer. Kelly, I guess two things come to mind when I think about dispatchers, and I guess two qualities or traits that they absolutely have to have, or they have to quickly get, and that would be a thick skin and the ability to multitask. What's your thoughts there?
Multitasking is key, absolutely. It's a skill that's needed. You have to be able to do multiple things at the same time, and dispatching has evolved. It's not just push the button to talk and let go to listen. Thank you, Scott Hayney.
Officer, Sergeant,
Yes.
Sergeant, or Lieutenant Sergeant?
Just officer.
Officer's good.
Yeah, it maybe used to back in the county days. It was that easy, but it's evolved. It's very technical. You have 8 monitors in front of you, 2 different computers are running. The radio's now computerized. The phones are now computerized. So there is that element of, it's huge. It's multitasking, and it's almost overstimulating. To someone to come into a dispatch center that's never experienced that is typically highly anxious by the time they walk out of there. We've had firemen walk in and go, "Oh my God, I can't handle this," and they turn around and walk out because it's very stimulating. Lots of noise, radio traffic, phones ringing. But as far as the thick skin goes, y'all know me. I cry at a drop of a hat. So I won't say that it's thick skin that you have to have, but I will have to say that you have to learn to not take calls personally. You have to know that when you're dealing with these people, it is their absolute worst day. We don't know what kind of day they had, and then the type of call that they're calling in about, could be horrific or it could be very mundane to us, but to them it's their worst day, and that's what you have to take into consideration, is that you just don't take it personally. It's just the job that you do and the luck of the draw that you picked up that ringing phone.
And and no matter how small it is, because like you say, that's the biggest thing going through their life right now, going on their life right now in the moment, is that I know firefighters like, I can't believe they called us. This is so stupid. I can't believe this person called us. But the biggest thing going on in their life, that is an emergency to them or whatever, and so on and so forth. Now I do have to get back up for a second and just if there ever is a Scott Hayney watching this show, thank you for not writing the traffic tickets I deserve by speeding by you all the time. And thanks for not hooking up my daughter, because Emily she's 21 now, has a lead foot once in a while. But I know for a fact that when I first got to Louisville in 2000, we had to correct some attitudes with a couple people, and I got no problem saying this out loud. I talk about in class. I know twice within, I think, about 30 days, Kel and Tara, was I remember one of our ambulances back in the quarters, and it was a busy weekend, all kinds of calls, and they got pretty lippy with one of the dispatchers. And I gave them about 30 seconds, and I said, "Medic 5 from Chief 1, pick up the phone, it's me." And they answered the phone by saying, "Chief, we're sorry, it's been a bad day." So what do you think they've got going on up there? You called up there and apologized. Oh, wow. Well, it happened with another ambulance about that same month. And they picked up the phone. I said, "Look, it ain't happening no more. I know, don't tell me you're sorry. Go up there, and I'm just going to drop a little hint. Bluebell ice cream goes a long way." Okay, right? I mean, I remember times going up there, you talk about, Terry, we'd go up there. I know we used to try and bring ice cream. We used to try and bring treats once in a while. There was times that were so freaking crazy up there, or so busy, or just hot when they had probably, go from the old center to the new. I remember Santa. We do our Santa Claus thing. This sounds corny to some people. I don't care. All of a sudden, when they're out in the tower ladder, the bucket up to the window, and they're just, So I guess my message is to a lot of people. I tell a lot of fire chiefs, have people stop by once in a while. Have them when it's National Telecommunicators Week. How about putting stuff together, buying them some polo shirts, some jackets, some stuff. Set up the baskets full of fruit, and make sure that each shift we used to make sure each shift, because I know at the firehouse when people bring cookies in on A shift to get to C shift, they go, "Yeah, we'll make sure they get them to them," and you get an empty plate. Take that opportunity to do that, if you will, and make sure you acknowledge your dispatchers. Kel, ask one more thing is, as we wrap things up here, what advice would you give? We do this when we have law enforcement, we have the police officers, firefighters, we have captains, lieutenants, battalion chiefs. We always ask them, what advice you give the new chief officer, new firefighter, new captain. What advice would you give, especially as many years you've been training as well as dispatching? You got that new dispatcher or two in front of you. What advice would you give them from you?
I have two pieces of advice. Training is my passion, and I want people to succeed in this job, not just because I absolutely love it and it's a career, but because my family is deeply entrenched in the fire service and the police service. I want them to make sure they take care of my family, and I want them to know that if they have a bad day or they're not thinking they're doing well, I just want them to come back. Take one day at a time. If you have a bad day, I just need you to come back tomorrow. That's my biggest thing, is just come back, we'll start fresh, and we'll go from there. This job is not for everybody. That doesn't make you a weaker person. It's just not. And you'll know soon whether or not you can hang in there and get the job done. But just come back each day and just give it 100%. It's worth it. It's rewarding.
It's rewarding, and I know you're very modest. Rewarding isn't probably even good enough to describe what you guys do. It's just, and I know you're a very modest person. It's like, oh, it's just, but no, it's absolutely incredible. You know how I feel about dispatchers. Terry, as we wrap things up here, buddy, what do you got?
It's it truly is, and I talked to Chief Wells. We talk about this quite a bit, and you know he's kind of working a new thing into his education repertoire, but it's the perspective thing, and everybody at every position has their own perspective of what their responsibilities are, and sometimes I think people can be narrowly focused or myopic, if you will, and I think a lot of times we have to remember that bigger, broader picture, and I think that in dealing with communications, it's unfortunately one of the easiest things to forget, because I want on the radio right now, and I want to say what I want to say, and I want this instantaneous response, and I want the gas company here in 2 minutes, and you know all these things, and so you know I have to remind myself and remind our people sometimes that the person you're talking to, they're not sitting in an isolated sound booth waiting for you to say something on the radio so they can jump to your your service. There's a few things going on in their world too, and so I think again, unsung heroes, underappreciated oftentimes, and forgotten a lot as far as how crucial the role that you all do to keep us safe and to keep our day moving forward, but more importantly to end up with a successful outcome or a result for the true customers that are out there, and that's the people that are calling 911.
Well, it's like I said, Kelly, it's incredible what you guys do. We can't thank you and Mark enough. We had for our folks that are dialed in and folks that watch us in the future, we had Mark Payne and Kellie Hayney from Denco 911. Kelly is one of our favorite people. She was with us for a long time, and I've said this before. Those that are in the fire service and law enforcement know that there are firefighters and police officers alive today because of the actions that have been taken by dispatchers, whether it was through a mayday or a police officer in trouble. That is a fact. That's not a story. That is a realistic statistic. It's something somebody should keep track of. How many lives? In fact, it'd be too hard because it's just the routine stuff, but there are police officers and firefighters alive because of what our dispatchers do. Kelly, if someone wanted to get a hold of you, email address?
My email address is kelliehayney@denco.org, so it's Kellie, Kellie, .Hayney, Hayney, @denco.org.
Perfect. Well, hang in there with us for a second, Kel. Hey, our next show, folks, is September 21st. You can catch some incredible shows every Wednesday here at 12 p.m. Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern. I get to interact with some great people like we had today, some wonderful friends.
Thank you.
We're all on Facebook and Twitter. What web page is Denco on Facebook as well?
Denco is on Facebook. It's Denco Area 911 District, and our website is www.denco.org.
Perfect. You got Kelly's email address. You got Mark's. Terry, email address, buddy?
Yep, I'm going to reach its first initial last name, T. McGrath, McGrath, @cityoflouisville.com.
Perfect. And I'm at 5alarmleadership@gmail.com or Lasky@trophyclub.org. Well, I have the honor of serving here. But that's it for our show today, folks. Spread the word. Take care of your dispatch center, your dispatchers, and incredible people doing an incredible job for us. We never end any of our shows without mentioning this. That's in closing. Please keep the men and women serving in armed forces in your thoughts and prayers, and especially right now, please keep our brothers and sisters on the law enforcement side of our family in your thoughts and prayers as well. They're going through a very tough time. They need our support. They're saving lives. They're taking care of your family. We need to remember them. Kelly, thank you so much for taking care of my family for all these years. Love you very much. You're an awesome person. With that, folks, be safe, and we love you. God bless you.